Good morning. Today is Friday, May 3rd, 2024. The anti-Israel protests on university campuses since October 7th, and especially escalating in the last few weeks, are deeply troubling, painful on many levels. How is it that students, even at elite universities, are so narrowly focused on hating Israel that they can't even condemn Hamas for the barbaric attack of October 7th, for recognizing and condemning Hamas for using Gazans as human shields, for rape and sexual abuse, which is now widely verified? How can they not even call for the release of hostages? And it is very painful that there are so many Jews among these groups. It's painful to see the ugliness, the hatred, the calls for violence against Jews. And this is our next generation of adults, maybe even leaders. So without at all minimizing how bad that is, we do have to realize that there is something known as the ovation effect. Protests, like many forms of group behavior, can be contagious. Omar Wasow is a political science professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and he says that one way to understand this is, imagine if you're in a theater, there's an audience in the theater. If some people in the front stand up, then other people start to stand up, and it's a cascade throughout the auditorium. In this case, he writes, it is not surprising that the ovation, in quotation marks, began last week at Columbia University. The university's proximity to national media in New York and its status as an Ivy League institution give it a position of prominence that is similar to someone in the front row of an audience. The conflict there then contributes to this great cascade, to other campuses joining in, and other media around the country and around the world paying attention. But it is clearly much more than that. With people outside the university playing a large role in fomenting this. Like some of you, I was at McGill's pro-Israel rally yesterday, and you had pro-Israel supporters on one side of the fence and anti-Israel protesters on the other side of the fence, with a large number of police in between, keeping distance between them. And both sides were chanting and yelling slogans at each other. I was standing next to a friend who said, I wish I could find someone on the other side to talk to, just to sit down, to listen, to speak civilly so that we could both at least understand each other. Instead of just slogans back and forth and yelling, just to sit and understand, because it's complicated. I've shared with you before this quote. The first victim in war is nuance. And I agreed with him. But of course, in that context, there was no one. There was no way, physically or metaphorically, to cross that barrier. But to my mind, that is one element that has been absent since October 7th. At least I'll say I haven't seen it. Why isn't that part of the strategy of universities? At Columbia, at Harvard, at McGill, UCLA, and others. Why isn't that part of the strategy of these great universities in dealing with this volatile situation to bring together small groups of students from both sides, together with objective professors who are trained to act as mediators and communicators, to be able to begin some kind of communicating? Not that we're all going to agree on everything, but at least that we could speak to each other as human beings, not just yelling slogans across a barrier of police. And that, to me, is the real shame in this, because that should be the role of a university. That should be the mandate of a university in particular, to try to foster that kind of discussion. But I don't see it. Except in one place. Now, I learned about this from an article written by Shira Tamir. It appeared a couple of weeks ago in Times of Israel. And the one place that I learned that this is actually happening, you may be surprised to learn, is Bar Ilan University in Israel. Now listen to this. Bar Ilan has a course that's offered every year titled Jewish-Arab Interreligious Dialogue. This year, of course, there was a lot of discussion about whether that course would take place. As you know, the Israeli universities delayed their fall semester because so many of the students and professors were serving in the IDF. So the fall semester actually began in January, January 2024. And of course, in January, the scars of October 7th were very fresh and were ongoing. Israel was reeling, as we still are, from the devastation and the terror and the war. But, like every other year, this course took place. And the instructor, and a lot of the success of this course is due to this instructor. His name is Dr. Ben Malav. And his way is to be able to bring together Jews and Arabs in a civil context, respecting every group, to be able to learn about each other, to be able to ask difficult questions of each other, but to do it within a context where there is communication. Now, this is very interesting. Shira Tamir writes, as I stepped into the classroom on the first day of the semester, I was met with a startling realization. The vast majority of my classmates were Muslim students. And I learned, she writes, that that's not unique to this semester, but a recurring pattern that happens every year with this elective course. And that in itself says something very, very important about Israel. That there is a large population of Muslims in Israel who want to speak to Israelis, who want to find a place to be able to civilly discuss what's happening. Shira writes, throughout the semester, under the guidance of Dr. Malav, we embarked on a journey of exploration, delving into the histories, traditions, and beliefs of both Judaism and Islam. I gained a newfound appreciation for these topics, not just for the richness and diversity of religious expression, but also for the many commonalities we shared. I have said this before, many times. If we could leave the politics aside, the two religions that are the most natural allies of each other, that have the most in common, are Judaism and Islam. I quickly found myself drawn into fascinating conversations that challenged my preconceived notions and forced me to confront my own biases and assumptions. She writes, as the semester drew to a close, I found myself embracing an increased sense of purpose and conviction through our shared experiences and conversations. I came to realize that true reconciliation begins with a willingness to listen and to learn from one another, to embrace the humanity that binds us together. And that is absolutely true. That is the only way that this will get better. War has never solved an intractable problem on a long-term basis. This course, Jewish-Arab Interreligious Dialogue, did not offer easy solutions to the complex issues facing Jewish and Arab communities. But it provided a safe space for dialogue and empathy that was sorely needed at a time of heightened tensions and divisions. In a world too often torn apart by fear and hatred, the ability to sit down with one another as real people is ultimately a profound act of resistance. Yes, it is idealistic. And yes, it does not answer the hard questions. But it does create the context and the safe space to grapple with these questions with civility and listening and learning. And that is what university is for. And that is what I see missing across North America. But leave it to Bar Ilan University in Israel to show us it can be done. My friends, I wish you a great day and a beautiful Shabbos, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.